Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you're not going stir crazy in the house. We're all stuck in this whole quarantine issue together and it gets frustrating. You know, you want to get outside, you want to go do things, maybe even take your car for a drive, but we can't. So what I did to help keep us from going stir crazy is put together my personal top 10 list of car movies. A lot of these you may have already seen, and if you haven't, you definitely need to give them a shot. Now, these are in no particular order, and again, these are my personal list, and what I want you to do is write in the comments your favorite movie. It doesn't have to be off my list, or pick one off my list that you enjoy the most, and then put yours on top of that. So, here's what we're going to do. Starting with number one, again, no particular order, Smokey and the Bandit. This is a must-watch movie. If you have already seen it, you know what I'm talking about. This is an incredibly addicting movie. Starring Burt Reynolds, Jerry Reed, Sally Fields, and it's basically about a legendary truck driver who gets challenged to make a 24-hour run, pick up some bootleg Coors beer, meanwhile getting chased by the cops, outrunning them in his Trans Am, with his partner, the Snowman, played by Jerry Reed, in the semi-truck, and Sally Field, who they happen to stumble across on the way. Now, this is a high-speed pursuit movie with action from beginning to end, and this is without a doubt one of my favorites of all time. All right, number two on my list is a new one, Ford vs. Ferrari. This movie is phenomenal. It's a long movie, so be prepared. It's 2.5 hours, almost 3, I think. Either way, it's worth the watch. Now, it's based on a true story. It follows Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles, and them teaming up with Ford to beat Ferrari in a 24-hour Le Mans. This is another action-packed film. Literally starts the second you turn the movie on. It's got a ton of history. Matt Damon plays Carroll Shelby. Christian Bale plays Ken Miles, and they do a phenomenal job. This movie is so well done, and it sucks you in. You're on the edge of your seat the entire time, and you really get almost emotionally involved in this movie. It's so good. I can't say enough about it. So definitely check that one out. That one was number 2 on my list. The next one, it might be a little slightly controversial because it's pretty far-fetched. The original, the very first, Fast and Furious. Now, I know this is a love it or hate it series. Now, you have to get past a lot of the inaccuracies in the movie and just kind of like enjoy it for the action and not so much the accuracy of the film or the cars or what they can actually do. Just brush all that aside and just kind of get ready to laugh and enjoy some high-octane racing. You know, the old school 90s flair is what it had. It really does capture that late 90s race scene that was running around the streets at the time. So it's an iconic movie. Again, it's hit or miss. I enjoy it even though it's pretty far-fetched, but it's a good watch, I think. Number 4 is Gone in 60 Seconds. Now, there were 2 of these. There was an original and then there's a reboot. And the reboot is the one I'm talking about. That was in 2000 with Nicolas Cage and Angelina Jolie. This was a pretty good movie. This, again, another far-fetched film in some aspects. But it's basically a retired car thief who gets back into the game to bail his little brother out of trouble. They have to steal 50 cars in one night, and the number 1 car on his list is a 67 Shelby GT500 named Eleanor. He takes Eleanor and the cops to an incredible car chase all through the city. It's exciting, it's energizing, and if you are especially a Mustang fan, you're going to love this. The sound of that car, not to mention it's nitrous fed, which is just kind of cool. You got to watch it. It's definitely on the must-watch list. Now, if you're into the old school hot rods, this next one is up your alley. American Graffiti. Now, this one was made in 1979, but takes place in the late 60s. It really depicts what life was back there in the 60s, the hangouts, the drive-ins, the drag racing, the hot rods back then, the way they did them up. It's really, really cool to watch and see how life was back then. It's a different style of movie than you get these days with the newer cars just to go back to that era really brings up a whole different side of hot rodding that I feel like is starting to get lost in time. Now, if you're into Formula One, this next one's going to be pretty cool. It's called Rush. It stars Chris Hemsworth, and it's another true story documentary type movie on James Hunt and Niki Lauda. Now, these two, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing his last name right, so I apologize if I'm not. Now, these two had a huge feud and a big rivalry back in the day in the Formula One. And they were both such amazing drivers that they kind of like pushed each other to a whole new level. But that rivalry really wasn't always friendly. They both had a hot head and a temper, but you know what? That made for a really good movie. High speed, lots of action, lots of drama, and it's worth the top 10 list. Now, another movie based on professional racing is another old one, Days of Thunder. Now, this is one I feel doesn't get talked about much anymore. It stars Tom Cruise, and it's about a guy who's coming up into the NASCAR circuit. And he's a hothead, let's say the least. He drives cars hard. He doesn't pay attention to people. He doesn't like rules. And he's a very hot-headed, hot-tempered driver who needs to reel it in, and his pit crew and his sponsors and everybody involved on his team is really trying hard to do that and failing miserably. Now, this is a great movie. It's action-packed and definitely guaranteed to get your blood flowing with some serious race scenes. Now, next on the list is one of my personal all-time favorites. Now, I'm not too sure it's a dedicated car movie, but there's definitely a specific car that this movie is centered around, and that is Back to the Future. The DeLorean is pretty much infamous, and this is an absolutely epic movie. It's about a kid who runs into this mad scientist, so to speak, who builds a time machine out of a DeLorean. They go back and forth in time, trying to find his way back to 1985, but yet finds a ton of complications along the way. It's absolutely fun. It's funny. The DeLorean is just cool. I don't care who you are. If you don't think a DeLorean is cool, man, you got to reevaluate things, because that is just a cool car. Although in all reality, it is pretty slow, but they make it seem fast in the movie. It's definitely an awesome, awesome movie. Everybody's heard of it. It's definitely one of those Hall of Fame must-watch movies of all time, so obviously that one's on my list. This brings us to number 9 on the list, and that's going to be Bad Boys with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. These two cops tearing up the town, high-speed chases in a Porsche 911 Turbo. These two cannot stay out of trouble. They are, and I quote, a magnet for random gunfire. It is full of explosions, full of car chases, and the final scene, they get into an epic race with a mid-60s Shelby Cobra. Now, that was one of my dream cars, still is one of my dream cars, and to see this race is just, it's cool. It is just downright cool. Definitely an awesome movie. It's rated R, so don't really watch it with the youngins if you're too worried about them dropping a whole lot of F-bombs, because there's a lot of F-bombs. So, fair warning in case you got the youngins around, but it's a great movie. It's hilarious. Hilarious movie. Definitely watch that one. Now, number 10 on my list is Christine. This is an absolutely cool movie. It's about a kid who gets his first car. It's a Plymouth Fury, and this car is possessed. Literally possessed. Like, he takes the time to fix it up, and lo and behold, the car starts to have a mind of its own. It's changing channels, the headlights are turning on, the engine's turning on and off. He even crashes it, and it fixes itself. It really kind of messes with his head. It starts to tweak his personality a little bit. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. Now, that's my top 10 list. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add a bonus movie. Now, this isn't a big blockbuster movie, but it's one of those low budget kind of, I don't want to call it a B movie, but it's not one that really hit the theaters. But it is a fun, action-packed film. It's called Redline. Now, there's a lot going on in this movie. There's this female mechanic who everybody kind of underestimates. She builds cars. She races the cars. there's this underground, I guess we'll call it racing association, where all these rich guys get these fancy cars. They race them for big money. There's a lot of side betting, and she gets caught up in it and ends up being part of the bet. Now, this is a really cool film because it's got wild cars like the Ford GT, Lamborghinis. It's got a lot of high-end cars. And again, it's not a high-budget movie, but it is action-packed and kind of addicting. So it's just a little something that maybe you didn't know about because it's not a mainstream type movie. But it is pretty cool to watch. I enjoyed it. Now, that's my list of car movies I think you should watch. Again, personal list, not something I pulled off the internet. Let me know if there's anything on this list you haven't seen yet. Put that down in the comments. Put your favorite movie in the comments. I want to know that as well. I have a hard time picking, I really do, but I think Back to the Future and Smokey and the Bandit are probably my top two. So go grab some popcorn, pick one of those movies, and just chill out for the night. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Drop a like on the video, and I'll catch you next time.